Hi there, Randi Green here. Let us continue. We are on page 1 on the text material, and this is course 3, just so you kind of know it with the new reality program. Whereas in the 2 first courses, I was talking a lot about the new reality programs, and as you know from course 2, that version of it that we're working with this year will change, and next year they will come with something else. And then we have the winter period where we are going to work with our transformative energy system, since we are being pushed into what we could call the dark grid lines, or the time of year where what we could say the different cycles that did not work so well will have their upper hand. And I'm deliberately not putting it in a worse way because it depends on our genetics. Everything from here on depends on our genetics. Sorry about that. So that is all about, okay, what are we made of? What is the quote-unquote contract that we are on? And that means, are you on an enslavement template? Are you on an imprisonment template? Have you been dropped here? Are you part of the military projects? This is where those of you at this point in your energy work, you need to know what you are. There is no way around this. And I'm not going to tell you what you are, because this is for you to figure out. And you will discover you probably have several layers. It could be that on a deeper layer, you are an enslavement template and you have modified in this life to become a military project. So we can't say that once you've seen that layer, that's all that you are, because this is not how it works. You have different fields and you have different layers, and it's up to you to learn to understand these layers until you have cleared these fields and you have resumed to the transformative energy system, which you need to have to be able to get outside of this enclosure. And how do you get outside this enclosure? By transforming everything that stands in the way. You're literally working your way through the different rings of what you're made of. And this is where the molecular state and the physical body composition comes in. This is where that becomes important. So we understand that, as we learned in the advanced work with the rotundum and the advanced work with nutrition, that the spatial energies are part of your physical form as well. And that's where we are here in some of the clearing work obstacles. Because one thing is that we're talking about the changes that are happening in our reality field as part of the old world order setup. And the new reality programs, once they come back next year, they will begin to run on their own newly created grids, as we discussed in the course 2. So they will no longer use this reality and the energies of this reality, because they have been trying that for so long now, and they have come to the conclusion that the damage to the network and the holographic network and the racial grids are too large, which we will experience every winter from here on when the sun goes into its low angular diffraction pattern, where we will have the energies of the red, orange, yellow version of the sun, which are connected to the previous civilizations of our planetary system. That goes with what we could say lesser developed states of the human genetics, even though you would say, well, cycle 1 after the timeline event should technically be high in composition if we go with the idea that we had the original races there. But that's actually a no, because they were hit very, very hard with the third cycle energy. So they regressed into a very, very primitive state. And then you had cycle 2 that was a reseeding that were trying to undo the effects of the first cycle, and they, evolutionary speaking, were on a little bit higher level. That's the one we kind of call the civilizations of Mu. And they were, what we could say, they did get into the position of the fourth cycle before they crumbled and fell to their own contamination, because that was the issue there. Infection first cycle and contamination second cycle. And that's how the genetics work differently. And quite a lot of the stuff we see in the underworld, that's from the second cycle, from the continent of Mu, which were a supercontinent. It was just not just one place on the planet. It was a supercontinent, which then went into what we could say covered under ice, and were broken up and became part of the later type of supercontinent. There were different types of supercontinents, which science will tell you as well. There was one where everything was connected on one type of tectonic plate, and then it divided, all depending on the dynamics and what was going on and which racial grids and what holographic network and energies and all of these kind of things that has changed the surface of our planet many times. And that's also part of the soil, and it's covered in the soil. So as our sun goes back into earlier versions of itself, the energies of these cycles will activate in our human genome because it's there, it's dormant. And when I say it's dormant, it can have both physically ailment effects as they spark to life if we don't get it under control and transform it via the transformative energy system. Or it can be in the other dimensions around our body, in the fields around our body, which some of you have not got access to. And I've made a nice depiction that is technically the fourth cycle body that as part of our shift using the understanding of the molecular state. So here, the little drawing I made on page 1 is the molecular state. So that's kind of the solution when we talk about the components in the human body. I've put in my version of it because I want to put in some ideas there that you can work with as part of the transformative energy system. So you have the transformative energy system, understanding that's the vibrational field that you activate there. And to be able to activate and transform the molecular state, which is the depiction you have on page 1, then you need to have the vibrational field up and running. So you have to have cleared your emotional field. If you're still stuck in your emotional patterns, you will not be able to transform the molecular state. This is the biofield, vibrational field connection, or the psychosomatic connection. So if you haven't cleared your emotional field, this energy work is not for you yet. But you need to learn it if you want to avoid the effects of the older racial grid component energies spark to life in your physical form. And as they do so, they are also activating on the different rings around your body that follows the 9 rings of the vibrational field, which are depicted on the last page or the second last page in this text material, which you know from the transformative energy system or the advanced work with the emotional field. So now we're beginning to take all of the sciences of the transition science course material and put together, as in there you learned the highest level of it. Now we're beginning to, okay, how does that get implemented into our energy work with the physical form, because that's where we are now. And as when we talk about the third cycle that goes with the 3-9 pillar, we are in a way working our way out of that section right now. So all depending on how well you have done your clearing work, if you have done it well enough, so to speak, you should be able to spark to life your mind field now, the radiation level, and with that begin to build in what we could say density 3 energies into your mind field, from where you will get more and more solutions to how to work with your vibrational field, which will be the field that will and are connected to the 2-8 pillar, the continent of Mu, and some of the contamination issues that arose there that are connected to the underworld. So this is where we are every winter time. We are now getting a taste of how the world could look 24 hours once the sun is gone. So that is every winter time now from September until spring. We will have in the Northern Hemisphere the prelude for what it would be in the future when the sun is no longer doing what it's supposed to do, when it goes into that low energy state that it has during winter time. Then all of these old levels of our grids will rise to the surface. And in the Southern Hemisphere, of course, when they go into their when we have summer, they have winter, they will experience the same thing in the Southern Hemisphere. So that's how it's going to be. And then we have in the Northern Hemisphere, not in the Southern, they're doing something else down there. It's a different project. But up here in the North, we will have the enhanced humans that are coming in from March until September, where they are trying to create what we could say the survival plan, the transition plan for their selected proponents or their selected groups within humanity. So it's not for all. The rest will fall into the hands of whoever and whatever's here. So that's also winter time, where we could say, and again in America, you have the para-universal matrix races that are working with the continent or the grid lines of Mu that they are now adapting, including, as I talked about in the material in the matrix program change, Matrix of Change course 2, where I talked about how they are opening up old portal systems that are also connecting to Atlantis. So we're going to have an interesting revival of some old types of genetics, which they feel is their best way to get inserted, what they need to get inserted, again, reverting our planetary state into previous and earlier cycles where the human genome worked in a different way. So this is what they're doing. They are transferring us back in time, so to speak, to earlier versions of the human genome to be able to link up to what we call the extrasystemic or extraterrestrial versions of their DNA, because the current type of human DNA is no longer of use for anyone, only for the transhumans and the greys, because they can modify whatever, and they don't care if it becomes bionic cellular structure, because they have already brewed their hybrid kits that they are continuing their branch of a type of organic vessel, from where they will continue their own survival, evolution or mechanics or whatever. Sorry, I'm away from that one. I'm going to look into the transhuman because I don't care. This is where we are. So we now understand these dynamics where we understand that this is what is important for us. So again, let me repeat, you have done the transformative energy system, the 7 courses of the transition sciences. There you work with the holographic blueprint, the vibrational field, the radiation field that are connected to your mind field and your emotional field, which you are seeing on page 3, just to remind you of that one. And then you have the advanced emotional field that are connected to the current reality program, the 9 layers there that you're seeing on page 4. And that needs to be cleared out so that you can begin to work with what we could say the original version of the molecular state that we are now here taking into consideration. So you understand these different steps, and I will repeat it. Now we're just kind of taking with the body as in the molecular state. I'm just writing that one in because I hadn't done it before. So now you see we begin with the solution, that is the molecular state. This is where it becomes important because the sun and the human body are interconnected. And that is what I want to work with here, because that is probably going to be the largest challenge for us. One thing is that we already dealt with what we could call the vibrational field and the old world order programs, as well as the base program, enslavement or imprisonment system, which is what we see on page 3, that one with the mind field and the emotional field. That's part of what we could say the base program set up for most humans. And then we have the advanced emotional field that are part of the old world order races, the LPF2 races on page 4. That's part of their project, which were taken into the event program with the Greys and what they tried to adapt it into, which they failed. And now we are then looking at what we could say the transformative energy system and how it connects to the molecular state on page 1. And that's where we will begin. So for those of you who haven't done the transition science courses, you better get started because you need that information. And here I'm telling you that the beginning, the psychic energy, the psychic processes, and keeping the psychic energetic balance, that's where you learn to work correctly with information and your vibrational field. Then the advanced energy system, you're looking at the 9 rings that are connected to the old world order, LPF2 races and their programs, where you can clear that one out following what we could say the AIT or the alien inversion inserted technology that's connected to the Hara quadrant, etc. And then you work with the advanced work with nutrition, the advanced work with the rotundum, where you understand that your physical form is composed of lunar, stellar, and solar and earth energies. That's why we are here. And then you take it all and lift it into the understanding of the transformative energy system, where you understand that the mind field were original part of Syrian engineering, and the Pleiadians took care of the vibrational field alongside with what we call many of the transformative processes within nature. And that will link to the sun. So here we're just taking that to the next level where we understand, okay, we are having the issue with the sun now. Before that, we were dealing with the energetic parasites of the 9 rings of our emotional field connected to the AITs, or the alien inserted technology, as part of the old world order program. We were dealing with the mental field, the emotional field as part of the base program, and these programs, the factory setting that were connected to the physical form. But all of that is changing now. People that are stuck in their mental fields and their emotional fields of the old base program variation, even though they tried to modify it with the event program, did not succeed. And that's why they took in the whole, okay, let's then use the outer terraforming features with chemtrailings, inserts of different nanotechnology, different types of amplification methods, using what we understand as injections, to use that expression so you know what I'm talking about, amplifying that and sparking to life what we could call a kind of concealment, kind of ensuring that all of the 4th dimensional energetic parasites would be contained within the human vessels of the majority of the human population. That's what's been going on the last 2 years with the different types of injections. And they will continue to do so to keep humans that are walking around in our reality that are not aware of anything, including the clones, to avoid their energy system to shed off huge amounts of energetic parasites, because that's just going to get worse now. So we will see how that one will play out. And I'm pretty sure they're going to come up with new types of technology that will amplify specific vibration that will keep these energetic parasites contained within the different humans, as we talked about in the Changemaker Course 4, where I talked about the cubes that are coming in, that are clearing out around people, or evaporating fields that are shedding off more than what is allowed within the daily quanta. These technologies are still here because they're technically part of the event program. So we are still having different types of 4th dimensional technology that are now coming in and wiping and clearing humans that are shedding off high amounts of energetic parasites. And that will, of course, in the long run, be the end of these physical vessels. So now we are in a completely different reality setting, which for most of you will sound very science fiction-y, right? So this is where we are. So we are understanding here that the different steps of our energy work: base program, page 3, old world order program, page 4, that kind of configuration. And now and there you shift it into clearing out the inserted technology from the old world order programs, vibrate your vibrational field up, activate your heart field, transform the chiasm as you learned in the advanced work with the energy system, as well as going into the template sciences, where you learn the next step of what the chiasm and what the heart field is supposed to be to vibrate specific type of energies that connect you to the reality field. All of that is covered in the transition sciences, the template science course material, and the Changemaker course material. So you have the steps there explaining this, and I know it's a lot to take in and it's a lot to process when you do it in a linear way, but I can only share with you what I know. How you adapt your mind field to process this level of information, again, depends on your genetics. Some of you will have the capacity for it. Others of you will, no matter how much you study it, it will not stick, because you simply haven't got the genetics that can absorb this information, integrate this information, and begin to build the complex energy system of the mind field that is needed to contain and keep this type of information as part of your knowledge field or your perception field. So the information here is given so that you can build the necessary structures in your holographic energy system that will allow your mind field to work correctly with the components of the holographic network and the complex information system that are imbued in all holographic units, creating a pattern of change from where you will generate that knowledge, that information system that is in alignment with the continued progression of your energy system to be able to participate in the original density energies, as were the project in the pillar programs. So let us work with, we are here having the issue like all of the other races here, that the molecular form is in the way. So we need to transform that. And we are being forced to work with it now. If the sun had still radiated its original density 3 energies and the emission of it had been within the vibrational field of density 2, we would not have been forced to work this way for a very, very long time. But now we are plunged right into it because of the collapsing of everything around us. So that is when we call the evac, the call-outs, as you know from the template science course 4, where we have the call-outs that are telling us, yeah, the game has changed. Now we are in a different position. Now you need to work to get out and either follow the gate systems out or the restoration program, or follow the higher ways of energies of the different races that are coming in and evacuating their groups, either via the space arcs or via highways of energy from where they can change their molecular structure as well. And we know the enhanced human has been working for that. The solar system nations have been working for that over a very long period of time, ending up with the advanced technology of what is called the embryonic overriding, where they have now changed the human molecular state in their selected humans to be able to be overridden holographically from different levels of advanced types of technology that are able to go in and interfere with the human genome. So they are already on track on that one. We are going to do it by our own means. So we are not going to use technology unless you're part of these programs, then it will happen automatically. But as I also get from their work here this year, due to the transhuman agenda, the dark agenda, the parallel universal matrix, etc., it is the collective fields are now changing to such a degree that it becomes more and more difficult for them to work with the normal human vessels, and therefore they are going to put in what we could call operating vessels, or nirmankayas, or whatever the Buddhists called it. These artificial vessels that you can engineer, put in, work for a period of time, and then dismantle it, deformulate it, and then pull it out, similar to what we could say the technology Greys are using in the 4th dimension. So this is all, everything is possible. It's just a matter of where they wanted. They could have done that from the beginning, but they were, as everybody else, looking in and saying, well, 2 steps. One, they still needed different types of compositions of the original configuration to create new physical forms of humans that will exist in our solar system. So they needed to prolong their projects. And secondly, they, of course, have this responsibility to their own civilization, which are the current form of humans, where we have our responsibility towards the original lineages of where we come from. Everybody's working under their original configuration now and what they are, including the ones that are under the dark ones and the POM races and whatever's going on. Everybody's now resuming to what they are and then will align with their lineages and the original composition and purpose and function of who and what they are. So this is part of the new levels. And for those who have eyes to see with, they will see this clearly. For others that don't, they will not see it that clearly. They will still just see the clone vessels, because they will be part of that relative reality where that is what they will see. And they will see the deterioration happening around them. They will see the collapse of their societal structures. They will see new types of government. They will see how things are falling apart. And interestingly enough, when we talk about governments, just to put that one in here, in Denmark, we're going to have a new election. And years ago, it would have been unthinkable of the different coalitions to work together. But that is what they are going out now, saying we'll need to work together, everybody, because we are in such a crisis that it is no longer about political agendas and who is where and what. But we are going to work together if we're going to solve the issues that are in front of us. And that is the way forward. And that is the breaking down of the typical governmental structures that are now changing up here in the north. In the south of Europe, they are reverting to earlier versions of dictatorship and tyranny and other forms of super control, whereas up here we're trying to create a more flat structure where we are learning to work together, because that's the only way that humanity will survive. So that's in play as well. So that is what they have reached of effect this year with the different insertions of the different things that they have done up here in the Northern Hemisphere. Again, remember, we are talking the latitudes that goes with the 5 rings from the Arctic or North Pole, which we now also know is positioned in what we say in Russia, the magnetic North Pole, but we're actually talking the physical, what we perceive to be the North Pole, because technically we are floating around in a space that has no up and down. So that is, again, an imaginary understanding of what is up and what is down. And we also remember that what was south now today with what we understand as Australia and India and China, which were connected as part of one of the supercontinents, were actually the north in an earlier phase of our planet. So again, don't get too stuck with what is where and what is country and what is this and that and whatever, because it all comes down to that once everything was interconnected. So the difference is the racial grid and your original energetic composition and your genetic markers that connects with the different lineages and by that different racial grids, which then unfolds into different forms of relative reality perception. Okay, so we're shifting now. Everything is shifting now. And why do I make this shift? I could take this, when we talk about the challenges in the work, I could focus us on all of the horrible things that are going on. We've been doing that the previous years, those of you who've been following my material. And to be honest, what we give energy, what we focus on, we give energy, right? So if we focus on all of the disasters, we will align ourselves with that. So here we now align us with where we need to go and what we need to do. Much better solutions. So that's the solution. Now we focus on not on what is not working, but what we need to do to get ourselves upgraded so that we can transform, so that we can do what we need to do. Sorry about that. So this is where we are. So that's a little bit of a wake up with me doing all this coughing. That's kind of jolting you to wake up a little bit when you listen to this. So let us shift gear. I would recommend that you go in and look up these different components, so that you take your phone or your internet or whatever, and I've already done that for the purpose. For instance, if you go in and look up carbon, which are 80% carbon in the human body, with the source I've got here, that's from Wikipedia. Someone might say something else. Around 20% carbon in the human form. And you look up that as a chemical element, and it has the symbol C and an atomic number 6, and all of that you can look up in chemistry. Again, Coursera.org has brilliant quick understanding chemistry courses where you can learn the basics of this, so you kind of have an understanding of what is that and why is that. It's not that important, but what is important is that it is kind of only 1.025% of Earth's crust, which is interesting. And that carbon, as I get it, when I look at it, purple energy, and that's from the moon. So this is a chemical or a chemical component that comes, or chemical element that comes from the moon. So we have around 20% that belongs to the moon. So that's kind of what we need to have there. Plus it is what we call a hexagonal crystalline structure. That's important as well. It has 6 wedges in its composition. When you try to do the molecular state, it is a crystalline type of structure that goes with 6 hexagonal. Hexo means 6, so it has 6 different angles to it that goes into this special crystalline structure. Then we have hydrogen, which is yellow. That's part of the sun, 10%, and that is the most abundant what we call gas chemical element, estimated to contribute 75% of the mass of the universe. So that's the most abundant one that we have. Here on Earth, it is a vast number of hydrogen atoms are contained in water, plants, animals, and of course humans. We have hydrogen bonds. It is part of what we call the recreation of the new type of vessel that were engineered after the last ice age. And it is yellow. It's connected to the sun. We only have 10% of it, interestingly enough, as a hydrogen, but we have huge amount of water as well. So there we have this kind of H2O double composition that goes with hydrogen and oxygen that are connected in the human body. So even though we have 65% oxygen as well are tied to the hydrogens in different types of bonds. Again, you can look that one up. It's also, the crystalline structure of hydrogen is also hexagonal. And then we have oxygen, which is interesting enough, the last version of it. And that the crystalline structure of that one is actually like what we call a square or a cube. It's cube formed, which is interesting, like a square, not an upright cube as we know from the 5D cubes, but as a kind of a cubit, as you have this kind of container, a little block, a little like Lego, the little Lego items from kids are working with a square form. Look it up, you'll know what I'm talking about. And that is it has an atomic number 8, which I find interesting. So that's tied to the Niburians. It's tied to, it has the green-orange energy spectrum. It's tied to Earth. My best guess is that it's part of the reseeding. Was there oxygen when we were reseeding the 4th cycle? A version of pre-version of it, something we don't really know. Science will probably tell you, oh yeah, it's been here for zillions of years and whatever, but that's not the case. So it's very reactive and non-metal, and it is forms oxides with most elements as well as with other compounds. It's a kind of igniting, activating kind of component, if you ask me, from an energetic point of view. But these are the things you need to look up. So you kind of get that, understand, not that you are to get all hooked up and understand the different chemical components and are able to, like a little parrot, are going off with all of that, because that doesn't matter. We're looking at it from an energetic viewpoint. Nitrogen is bluish. It's from the stellar. It's also very abundant out in the universal structure, but not as much on our planet because the electromagnetic field around our planet are mostly working within what we call the green-orange spectrum, imbued with purple and yellow from the sun and the moon, and then other systems that have put in their what we could call energetic holographic fields that are amplifying the different fields that are composing our planetary system. So why do you need to know this? Well, it's not so important that you know it's this or that or whatever. It's just to put in that if we are looking into science, well, they will tell us that we are composed of the universe, of the sun, of the moon, and of the earth. And I just put that one in there, and you would say, well, that's just kind of, you just say, taking that information, and then you're adapting it into, so it fits the transformative energy system and the advanced work with nutrition and the advanced work with the rotundum. And you could say that is correct. But think about it. If we're kind of saying, well, we have these 5 different types of fields, or more that are part of our human form. We are part of the reality field. The reality field is part of a galaxy. The galaxy is part of a universal structure. So of course we are composed of the same components that you find out there. They will also be in us. Of course, we're made of the same elements. So it goes without saying that when there are changes in the universal structure, it hits the universal levels of our molecular form. When there are changes in the galactic structures, it hits the molecular levels of our the galactic levels of our molecular form. When there are changes in the sun, it hits the molecular level of our organic form. And when there are changes in the earth, it hits the molecular state of our organic form, goes without saying. And that's what I've been trying to depict with the different colors that are put in there, with the blue and the yellow and the green orange and the purple as the largest ring around us, because even though that we are not having what we would say a huge amount of carbon, our reality around us is we have the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, we have it in the soil, we have it everywhere on our planet. So that is one of the huge amounts of gas that are present in everything, every item on our planet due to the connection to the moon. So this is where we always talked about, well, why is it that people can't become solarians and breatharians and aquafarians and what have you? That is because we are in an environment that are tightly connected to the moon and some of the crystalline structures of the moon, and thereby the environment around us is not about breathing in the hydrogen rays from the sun or the emission rays from the sun, simply because the air we breathe are part of the magnetic field of around our planet that are tightly connected to the lunar energy. So therefore we are not in the current state capable of being breatharians, which would go with the fourth dimension. If we were in the fourth dimension, we would probably be able to connect more to the energies of the sun. But again, we also know density 2 energies of the sun are no longer present. So we need the nutrition from food. And that's where the energy work comes in. So if you look at the depiction, I'm just kind of put the 3 lines I put in with the turquoise, the magenta, and that kind of lighter purple, which I couldn't find the last color. It wasn't present in the colors I had to choose from to make this depiction, because we are now, when these 3 lines that are going, crossing through the body, through the fields, this is impossible to draw in 2 dimensions. So you need to put on your creative, imaginary mindset. These 3 lines are connected to a new spectrum of light that we need to shift into. And it is, as you have oversound or hypersound or supersonic sound or sound beyond what the visible spectrum of sound that the ear can hear, the waves that are composing the sound waves that your ear is engineered to listen to and absorb and take in and transform into information. The visual light are what your eyes are engineered to see and transform into information. But there is what we call a spectrum of light that is above the visual light spectrum. And we're not talking gamma rays or X-rays or anything like that science knows of. We are talking about that spectrum of light that is a crossing between frequency energies and density energies. And they give off a different type of vibration. And that is what these 3 lines are. You could call it oval light structures that we need to transform the 3 fields with. And these 3 lines go with specific types of energies that the first one we will encounter from the sun, and we can absorb from the sun via our mind field radiation level, where we connect to what we could say the oval light spectrum of the sun, which we will then be able to engineer our molecular structure to absorb from the sun once we have learned to do that in our transformative work. The turquoise is the one that bright aquafarian blue will be the first one we will be able to connect to in what's left of the sun. We are going beyond the vibrational radiation fields into an earlier version of the sun that exists in what we could say, it's not in a density formulation. It is beyond. It is a very, very early version of the sun that just exists as a holographic imprint. Okay, so this is what we need to work with. And I really need to cough now, so I'll end this video and continue the next one. Thank you.